09326 is how you get in touch with Larry Perry right now, live here answering your questions. Or if you want to go right to the shop, the number for Larry's shop is 407-629-2661. And Larry, I was actually in your shop just a couple weeks ago, and I asked JD, I said, JD, are you always fishing? And he said, 95% of the time, I'm fishing.
Yeah, he enjoys getting out on the Central Florida lakes, and you ought to see some of the pictures of the bass he catches. It's amazing. Hey, folks, listen, before we get to your calls, and geez, we got like one line open out of all these lines. So, but I need to mention this why it's on my mind, because I don't have the question come up often enough. You know, from like 2007 up until pretty much currently, Ford used a 3.5 V6 motor, and they also made a 3.7, earlier, and those are called Duratec engines, and they put them in a whole bunch of different vehicles. They put them in the Ford Edges. They put them in a lot of Ford Explorers have these engines. The Ford Flexes, some of the Fusions, and Ford Tauruses, they all use that 3.5 V6 engine. And the reason I'm trying to bring this up is they have internal water pumps that are actually driven off of the timing chain inside the engine. Now, these things go bad, and they start leaking coolant right into your engine oil. And it will literally, you don't know you have a problem until it overheats. And by that time, the damage is usually done. And you're looking at replacing an engine, I mean, we're probably talking 10 grand or so to put a motor in one of those vehicles. Now, it's kind of like this. And I had a customer call me up, and they were from out of state. And they were out of state. And they had one that had overheated on them, and I guess it overheated pretty bad. And it was a 2017 Ford Explorer. And they said, Larry said, we were on the highway, and all of a sudden the temperature lights come on, the gauge is all the way over, and the motor started making all kinds of crazy noise. So we had it towed it into a Ford dealer, and I think they told them that they needed an engine because of the water pump. And they gave them an estimate of it was almost $15,000. And I'm not talking about using a Ford motor. I'm talking about using a Jasper if you need one. But now this is where this gets good. I went ahead and I looked it up, what that vehicle was worth running. Well, I think this one had like 89,000 miles on it. The vehicle itself still has a book of around $20,000, in some cases, depending on how it's equipped, a little more than that. Do you know what that Ford dealer offered them for that car? $1,000. $1,000 for that Ford Explorer. And I'm sitting there going, well, I'm like, well, if they buy it, technically retail for them to fix it, they're going to have 15 grand in a car, before they could actually be able to turn around and retail it back out. But folks, listen, if you replace the water pump in those engines proactively, and if the car's got, close to 100,000 miles on it or whatever, go ahead and do the timing chain and stuff in it at the same time. You're probably going to spend $2,400, but it's going to make it bulletproof for the next 100, pretty much for the next 100,000 mile, or at least another, 8-10 years. But if you don't do it, you're going to lose a motor. It's just point blank, and after dealing with that this week, it broke my heart, and he knew about it. He knew about the water pump. That's what was really the bad part. He goes, I had it in my mind, Larry, to get this thing done sometime, this year. But he goes, I put it off. I got busy, never thought anything about it. But you go and you look out here, how many Ford Explorers, especially, they are out here on the road. There's thousands and thousands of them. And a lot of these folks, they don't know they're dealing with a time bomb. Them water pumps, when they go bad, they'll literally fill the engine full of all the coolant that's in the cooling system. And then when it mixes with the oil, it almost becomes abrasive and literally just starts eating the engine alive. So, if you know somebody that's got a vehicle like that, tell them to look it up on Google, water pump failure explorer. Now, this is only for the V6s. The 4-cylinders does not have this issue. They use an external water pump on them. So if your vehicle uses a 4-cylinder, don't worry about it. But if it is the V6, you better worry about it. You know, could you imagine a vehicle worth $20,000 one day and $1,000 the next over losing an engine? That's the reason this is so important for people to understand. You know, there's only so much I can do, and that's try to make it publicly aware. You know, they're not going to send you a warning in the mail. This might be the only one you get.
932-844-580 WDBO. What do you say we get to work, Larry?
Let's go to work.
All right,
Hey, Larry, Mark. I've always been able to figure out stuff. I've been on the planet for quite a few years, and I'm usually pretty capable. I've been thinking about these internal water pumps, and I was wondering, there must be a way to seal that thing in there or remove it and cover some ports or something and put an external water pump on these darn engines. Is there a way to do that?
Well, yes, there is, but you may run into another problem. See, they use pretty much the same engine block in the F-150s that uses a external water pump. And the problem that you run into, the EcoBoost 3.5 motors, which I think they're awesome engines, the thing is they use an external pump because they can. They have room for it. See, on those 3.5s they use in the front-wheel drive applications, like on the Explorers and Tauruses and everything else, those engines don't have room for an external water pump. Now could a person take that thing all apart, put a block-off plate on that area where that water pump goes? Why, absolutely. You just get you a plate for the F-150s, put it inside there, and hook it up. But, where are you going to, unless you just go into the lower radiator hose, if there's room, and put in an electric water pump, that would be about your only other alternative. I never thought about that, but I guess it could be done if you have room for it. But it would have to be an electric water pump that would go into the lower radiator hose in order for it to actually work and circulate the coolant properly. So, yeah, interesting concept. But, yeah, there's not a way, and as far as going inside there and fixing it to where the coolant couldn't leak out of it, well, see, this is the problem. You've got seals on the shaft that the timing chain is actually turning on the water pump gear. But see, when the bearings start going bad in the water pump and the shaft is no longer stabilized, well, the coolant's going to go somewhere, and it's going to wind up in the crankcase. It's just one of those things to where, if you don't replace the water pump on those 3.5 motors before they go bad, let your imagination run wild, because it's going to dump all the coolant right straight into the engine. You could seal all the holes you wanted to and everything, and it wouldn't make no difference, because once the shaft gets loose, the seals inside of it can no longer seal the coolant. So it's going to wind up inside the engine. I appreciate the open mic, and it gave me something to think about anyway. Block off the water pump and maybe put an electric water pump on it. But then you run into a whole new set of ideas, Will the alternator be able to support the battery well enough and, to run the electric water pump? How much of a draw would they be on the electrical system? So you're getting to an engineering aspect, which I love the thought of. But, sounds like a little bit of work. But so is replacing the water pump on these and doing timing chain services. Thanks for your open mic.
Hi folks, Larry Perry here. For automotive information, maybe you got automotive questions on cars, trucks, vans, SUVs. Maybe you're thinking about purchasing a used vehicle, and maybe you just want my opinion. Tune in to the Magic Mechanic radio show every Saturday, 3 to 5 p.m. on wdbo.com. Also tune in to our Magic Mechanic YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe. And we'll all get together, maybe fix a few cars while we're at it.